The letter arrived on a Tuesday, crisp and official-looking, with a law firm's letterhead that made my stomach drop. I'd spent years building a life where my father's absence couldn't touch me, but there it was, his ghost, delivered by priority mail. My name is Shanice, and I haven't seen my father since I was 8 years old. 21 years of birthdays, graduations, and life-changing moments, all without the man who helped bring me into this world. Now here was this letter, threatening to upend everything. "Girl, you're shaking!" my best friend Alia said, watching me from across my kitchen counter. "Open it already." I tore the envelope open, my fingers trembling despite my attempts to stay composed. The words blurred together at first, but then they snapped into focus. "Dear Ms. Rose, we regret to inform you of the passing of your father, Michael Cox." "He's dead," I whispered, more to myself than to Alia. The letter continued, mentioning something about a will reading and potential inheritance. Alia moved around the counter to stand beside me. "You okay?" "I should be," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. "He's been dead to me for years anyway, right?" My phone buzzed, Mom calling, as if she somehow knew. I answered on speaker. "Baby, did you get a letter?" Mom's voice was tight with concern. "Yeah, just now. Did you know? I saw it in the obituary section yesterday. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." I sank into a kitchen chair, the letter still clutched in my hand. "There's going to be a will reading. They want me there." "Are you going?" Mom asked. "I don't know if I—" "You should go," Aaliyah cut in. "If nothing else, to look that family of his in the eye. The other family, the replacement family, the wife and kids he chose over us." My stomach churned at the thought of meeting them. "The reading's on Friday," I said, scanning the letter again. "At the offices of Bruce Cox and Associates. I'll go with you," Aaliyah offered immediately. I shook my head. "No, this is something I need to do alone." Friday came too quickly. I chose my outfit carefully, a charcoal gray pantsuit that made me feel armored. The law office was housed in a gleaming downtown building, all glass and steel. As I stepped into the elevator, my reflection showed a woman who looked far more confident than I felt. The conference room was already occupied when I arrived. A man and woman sat on one side of the long table. They had to be Calvin and Mara, my half-siblings. They had his eyes. Our eyes. Ms. Rose, a distinguished older man, greeted me, extending his hand. "I'm Bruce Cox. Please, have a seat." Calvin's gaze followed me as I sat down, his expression cold and assessing. Mara at least attempted a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Now that we're all here," Bruce began, "let's proceed with the reading." What followed was a detailed accounting of my father's estate. Properties, investments, artwork, millions in assets, all meticulously catalogued. And then came the distribution. "To my children, Calvin and Mara Cox, I leave the entirety of my estate, to be divided equally between them." The words hit me like a physical blow. Nothing. Not even a mention of my name. "There must be some mistake," I heard myself say. I'm afraid not," Bruce replied, his expression sympathetic. "The will is quite clear." Calvin let out a small, satisfied sound. "Did you really expect anything else?" "Calvin," Mara warned quietly. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. 21 years of nothing, and he couldn't even acknowledge me in his will? "Ms. Rose," Bruce started. "No," I cut him off. "I didn't come here for money. I came here for answers." I turned to my half-siblings. "And I'm going to get them." Is that a threat?" Calvin asked, standing as well. "It's a promise." I walked out of that conference room with my head high, but my hands were shaking. In my car, I finally let the tears fall. Not of sadness, but of rage. My father had one last chance to make things right, and he chose to erase me completely. My phone lit up with a text from Alia. "How did it go?" I wiped my eyes and typed back, "Time to dig up some family secrets," because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That will reading wasn't an ending, It was a beginning, and I was going to make damn sure they all remembered my name before this was done. Mom was waiting when I got home, surrounded by dusty cardboard boxes I hadn't seen in years. She'd pulled them from the attic, and the sight of them made my throat tight. "I kept everything," she said softly, patting the box nearest to her. "Every photo, every letter, every scrap of paper that proved he once loved us." "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She pulled out a leather-bound photo album. "If you're going to fight this battle, you need ammunition." I sat cross-legged on the floor beside her as she opened the album. The first photo knocked the wind out of me. My father holding newborn me in the hospital, looking at me like I was his whole world. "He used to take you to the park every Sunday," Mom said, turning pages. "Rain or shine. Said his little princess needed her castle time." The photos told a story I barely remembered. Me on his shoulders at the zoo. Birthday parties where he wore silly party hats. Christmas mornings with him filming while I opened presents. "What changed?" I whispered. "These pictures. He looks so happy." Mom's hands stilled on a particular photo. Dad in a suit, standing next to a distinguished-looking older man at what appeared to be a corporate event. "That's Winston Hicks," she said. "Your step-sibling's grandfather. He offered your father a position at his company right around the time everything fell apart." I grabbed the photo, studying it closer. The same Winston Hicks who's now CEO of Hicks International. The very same. Mom reached for another box, this one filled with letters and documents. "Your father was ambitious, always dreaming big. Winston promised him the world. And all it cost him was his first family," I said bitterly. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. I opened it to find Bruce Cox standing there, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Rose, I apologize for dropping by unannounced," he said. "May I come in?" I led him to the living room, where Mom was hastily trying to organize the scattered memories. "Mrs. Bell," Bruce nodded to her, "I remember you from the custody hearings." "Why are you here?" I asked. Bruce pulled out a manila envelope. "There's something you should know. Your father. He tried to change his will 3 months ago." My heart skipped. "What?" "He came to my office, wanted to include you. But before we could finalize the changes..." Bruce spread his hands helplessly. "Let me guess. He had a convenient accident?" Mom's voice was sharp. "A stroke," Bruce corrected. "Very sudden. The new will was never signed." I laughed humorlessly. "How perfect for them." "There's more," Bruce continued. "Your father left this with me." He handed me the envelope. "He made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to him before the new will was executed." Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "The truth about everything. Be careful who you trust." "What's on it?" I asked Bruce. "I don't know." He was very specific. Only you could see it. After Bruce left, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, emails, financial records, photos, and voice recordings spanning 2 decades. "Oh my God!" I breathed, opening a folder labeled Winston Hicks, Evidence. "What is it?" Mom leaned over my shoulder. "Mom, proof of fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage." I scrolled through document after document. Dad was gathering evidence against Winston. "That's why he tried to change the will," Mom realized. "He knew they might come after him." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. About Dad." "Mara." I showed Mom the message. "Think it's a trap?" "Probably," she said. "But you're going anyway, aren't you?" I was already grabbing my keys. "I'll meet her in public, the coffee shop on 5th. "Shanice!" Mom called as I reached the door. She held up the photo of Dad and Winston. "Be careful. That man destroyed our family once. Don't underestimate what he'll do to protect himself." I nodded, tucking the USB drive securely in my pocket. "Don't worry, Mom. This time we're ready for them." As I drove to meet Mara, my mind raced with possibilities. Dad hadn't abandoned us. He'd been trapped, gathering evidence, playing a long game. And now he'd passed that game to me. "Game on," I muttered, pulling into the coffee shop parking lot. Through the window, I could see Mara already waiting, looking nervous. Time to find out if my sister was an ally or an enemy in this family war. Mara sat at a corner table, fidgeting with a paper coffee cup. She looked different from the composed woman at the will reading, more vulnerable, almost scared. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I replied. "Why am I here?" She glanced around nervously before leaning forward. "Calvin doesn't know I'm meeting you. Neither does grandfather." "Winston," I said flatly. "The man who helped destroy my family. It's not that simple." Mara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Dad was trying to protect you." "Protect me? By abandoning me?" He... Mara stopped abruptly as her phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. "We need to go, now." "What? We just got here." "Calvin knows I'm here. He's coming." She grabbed her purse. "Please, if you want answers, come with me." Against my better judgment, I followed her to her car. We'd barely pulled out of the parking lot when Calvin's black SUV roared in. "Get down!" Mara ordered, accelerating through a yellow light. I ducked as Calvin's vehicle swerved behind us. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. "There's a journal," Mara said, taking a sharp turn. "Dad's private journal. It has everything. Names, dates, transactions. Calvin's been tearing the house apart looking for it." "And?" I found it first." She patted her purse. "I was going to give it to you, but Calvin must have followed me." We zigzagged through side streets until we lost Calvin's SUV. Mara pulled into an abandoned warehouse parking lot, killing the engine. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She pulled out a worn leather journal. "Because Dad was right. About everything." She handed it to me. "Read it. But not here. Somewhere safe." My phone rang. "Aaliyah." "Where are you?" she demanded. "Your mom's worried sick." "I'm fine," I started to say, but Mara grabbed my arm. "Calvin's back," she hissed. His SUV blocked the only exit, and he stepped out looking furious. "Give me the journal, Mara." "It's not yours," she shot back. "Don't be stupid, little sister." He advanced toward us. "You know what grandfather will do." I clutched the journal to my chest. "Your grandfather's reign of manipulation ends now." Calvin laughed coldly. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. Dad was weak, sentimental. That's what got him killed." "Killed?" Mara gasped. "The stroke was convenient timing, wasn't it?" Calvin's smile was chilling. "Grandfather always said Dad was a liability. Too many conscience attacks about his first family." My hands shook with rage. "You knew? You helped cover up his murder?" "I protected our family's interests." He reached into his jacket. "Now, hand over the journal, or—" A police siren wailed nearby. Calvin's head snapped toward the sound. "I called them before we left the coffee shop," Mara said quietly. "I knew you'd follow us." Calvin's face contorted with fury. "You stupid bitch!" He lunged for her, but I stepped between them, driving my knee up hard. He doubled over with a grunt of pain as police cars surrounded us. "Calvin!" An officer called through a megaphone. "Step away from the vehicle with your hands up. You'll regret this." He snarled at us before complying. As the police handcuffed him, Mara turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. For everything." I opened the journal, finding a photo tucked inside. Dad with me and Mom. His last Christmas with us. On the back, in his handwriting, "My real legacy, keep her safe." "He never stopped loving you," Mara said softly. "Grandfather threatened to hurt you and your mom if Dad didn't cooperate. That's why he stayed away." My phone buzzed again. Mom calling. "I'm okay," I answered. "But you need to hear this. Dad didn't abandon us. He was protecting us." "I know, baby," Mom's voice cracked. "I just found his letters. The ones he wrote but never sent, explaining everything. Bruce brought them over." I watched as the police car carrying Calvin drove away. "We're going to make this right, Mom, for Dad." "Be careful," she pleaded. These people are dangerous. They're not just these people anymore, I said, looking at Mara. Some of them are family. Mara gave me a tentative smile through her tears. We had a long way to go, but for the first time, I felt like I had an ally in this fight. And with Dad's journal in my hands, we finally had the weapon we needed to bring Winston down. Back at my apartment, Mara, Mom, and I spread the contents of Dad's journal across my dining room table. Aaliyah brought coffee and stayed to help us piece together 20 years of secrets. Look at this entry, I said, pointing to a page dated 3 years ago. Winston forced Dad to sign over his patents to Hicks International. Patents worth millions. That was just the beginning, Mara added, pulling out more papers. Grandfather used those patents to secure government contracts, but the money never went where it was supposed to. Mom picked up a photograph paper clipped to a document. These men, they're federal officials? Bribed officials, Mara confirmed. Grandfather has them all in his pocket. That's how he's gotten away with everything for so long. My phone buzzed. Bruce calling. I put him on speaker. Calvin made bail, he announced without preamble. Winston's lawyers are already moving to suppress any evidence from the journal. They can't, I protested. We have proof of criminal activity. They're claiming it's privileged information, protected by attorney-client confidentiality. Aaliyah, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. But your father wasn't their attorney, was he? No, Mara said slowly. He was their victim. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. And I have proof. Dad sent me voice recordings. She played one, and Dad's voice filled the room. Winston's threatening me again. Says if I don't sign the Maxwell contract, he'll make sure Shanice's scholarship gets revoked. I can't let him hurt her future. Tears stung my eyes. All those years I'd thought he didn't care. He'd been fighting for me from the shadows. There's more, Mara continued. Videos of grandfather's meetings, offshore account numbers, everything Dad could gather. He was building a case. But why didn't he go to the authorities? Aaliyah asked. Mom's hands trembled as she held up another letter. Because of this. She read aloud. Winston has people everywhere. Police, judges, regulators. One wrong move, and my family pays the price. I have to be patient, gather everything, make it too big to bury. And now we have it all, I said. The journal, the USB drive, Mara's recordings. Bruce's voice crackled through the speaker. Be careful. Calvin's release came with conditions, but Winston's not bound by them. He'll be coming for that evidence. As if on cue, my building's security alarm blared. Mara rushed to the window. Grandfather's car just pulled up, with Calvin. Back door, I ordered, grabbing the journal and my laptop. Now! We scrambled to gather everything as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Mom shoved the loose papers into her bag, while Aaliyah grabbed the rest of the drives. Fire escape, I directed. But as we reached it, we heard voices below. They've got people down there too, Mara whispered. A loud knock rattled my front door. Shanice! Winston's voice boomed. Let's discuss this like reasonable people. Like you discussed things with Dad? I called back. Right before his convenient stroke? You're making dangerous accusations, young lady. While he talked, Aaliyah was texting frantically. She showed me her phone. Police on their way. Keep him talking. You killed him, I continued, my voice breaking. Your own son-in-law, because he finally stood up to you. I protected my family's interests, Winston replied coldly, just as I'm doing now. The door shuddered under heavy impact. They were trying to break in. Mara grabbed my arm. The neighbor's balcony. We can reach it from here. Mom looked terrified but determined. Go. I'll hold them off. Mom, no! I lost your father to them, she said firmly. I won't lose you too. The door splintered. Mom pushed us toward the balcony as Winston and his men burst in. Rachel, Winston said smoothly. Still interfering after all these years. Still destroying families, Winston. Mom stood her ground. The police are coming. They'll find everything. The police work for me, he smirked. But the FBI doesn't. Everyone froze. Bruce's voice came from Mom's phone, still connected. Agent Martinez, did you get all that? A new voice responded. Every word, counselor. All units move in. Sirens wailed outside. Winston's face contorted with rage as he lunged for Mom, but Aaliyah swung her heavy bag, catching him in the chest. He stumbled back as federal agents swarmed through both doors. Winston Hicks, an agent announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and suspicion of murder. As they led Winston and Calvin away in handcuffs, I hugged Mom tight. That was terrifying and brilliant. Bruce called the FBI right after Calvin's arrest, she explained. We just needed Winston to incriminate himself. Mara watched her grandfather being driven away, her expression a mix of relief and sadness. Dad would be proud, she said quietly. Of all of us, the evidence was safe, but our fight wasn't over yet. We still had a court battle ahead, and a family to rebuild from the ashes of Winston's destruction. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as Bruce prepped us for the preliminary hearing. We sat in a small conference room, surrounded by boxes of evidence and empty coffee cups. They'll try to discredit you both, Bruce warned, looking between me and Mara. Winston's lawyers are already spinning a story about disgruntled family members seeking revenge. Let them, I said. We have proof. We also have a problem. Bruce slid a newspaper across the table. The headline made my stomach drop. Key witness in Hicks case found dead. Marcus Thompson, Mara read, her voice shaking. Dad's old assistant. He was supposed to testify about the patent transfers. Apparent suicide, Bruce said grimly, though the timing is suspicious. Mom gripped my hand. They're sending a message. We can't back down now, I insisted. Dad died trying to expose this. A knock at the door made us all jump. Agent Martinez entered, looking grave. Calvin's agreed to testify against Winston, she announced, in exchange for immunity. He's lying, Mara burst out. He'll say whatever grandfather tells him to. Actually, Martinez replied, he's afraid. Says Winston ordered him to handle Marcus, but he couldn't go through with it. Someone else did the job. My phone buzzed with a text from Alia. Turn on the news now. I grabbed the remote for the conference room TV. A reporter stood outside Hicks International headquarters. Breaking news: thousands of internal documents from Hicks International have just been leaked online, revealing decades of corporate fraud and criminal activity. How? Bruce breathed. Mara's phone chimed. She read the message and smiled. The IT department. They were loyal to Dad, not grandfather. They've been waiting for the right moment. This changes everything, Martinez said. The prosecution wants to move forward immediately. Can you both testify tomorrow? Before we could answer, the fire alarm blared. Security guards rushed in. The building's being evacuated, one announced. Bomb threat. Another intimidation tactic, Bruce muttered as we hurried down the stairs. Outside, reporters swarmed us. Through the chaos, I spotted a familiar face, Winston's personal assistant, hurrying toward a waiting car. She's carrying Dad's briefcase, Mara gasped, the one that went missing after he died. I took off running, Mara right behind me. The assistant saw us coming and broke into a sprint, but she wasn't fast enough. I caught her arm as she reached for the car door. Give me the briefcase, I demanded. You don't understand, she pleaded. He'll kill me. We can protect you, Agent Martinez said, catching up to us. But we need what's in that briefcase. The assistant's hands trembled as she handed it over. Inside, we found a thumb drive and a sealed envelope addressed to me and Mara. Back at my apartment, under FBI protection, we opened the letter together. My daughters, Mara read aloud, tears streaming down her face. If you're reading this, I've failed to make things right while alive. The thumb drive contains recordings of every conversation I've had with Winston over the past 5 years, including the day he threatened to kill me. Keep reading, I whispered. Shanice, I never stopped loving you. Every decision I made, every compromise that broke my heart, was to keep you safe. Mara, you have your mother's strength and your sister's courage. Together, you can finish what I started. Trust each other. The truth is, your shield. Mom wrapped her arms around both of us as we cried. "We have everything we need now," Bruce said softly. "The leaked documents, the briefcase evidence, Calvin's testimony. Winston can't escape this time." My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered on speaker. "You think you've won?" Winston's voice was ice cold. "I built an empire. I've destroyed people far more powerful than you." "No, grandfather," Mara replied. "You built your empire on lies, and Dad gave us the truth to tear it down." "You ungrateful." "Save it for court," I cut him off. "We're not afraid of you anymore." After hanging up, I looked at our unlikely family gathered in my living room. Mom, Mara, Bruce, Aaliyah, Agent Martinez, all united by Dad's final mission. "Tomorrow," Bruce said, "we end this." "For Dad," Mara whispered. "For justice," Mom added. I picked up Dad's journal, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. "For the truth." Outside, news vans lined the street as the leaked documents continued to expose Winston's crimes. Tomorrow would bring the fight of our lives. But tonight, we had what Winston could never buy or steal: the strength of a family united by love and truth. And that made us unstoppable. The courtroom fell silent as I took the witness stand. Winston sat at the defense table, his expensive suit and confident smirk a stark contrast to Calvin's disheveled appearance beside him. Mara squeezed my hand as I passed by. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor began. Shanice Rose. "Ms. Rose, can you tell us about the events leading up to your father's death?" I looked directly at Winston as I spoke. My father spent 20 years gathering evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate crimes committed by Winston, his father-in-law. Winston's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! Speculation!" "Overruled," the judge responded. "Continue, Ms. Rose." I held up Dad's journal. This journal details every threat, every coerced decision, every illegal transaction, including the conversation where Winston threatened my father's life 3 days before his sudden stroke. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Winston's face darkened. "And how did you obtain this journal?" the prosecutor asked. "My sister Mara found it, and—" A commotion at the back of the courtroom cut me off. A man burst through the doors, bleeding from his head. "They tried to kill me!" he shouted. "Winston's men!" Security rushed forward as chaos erupted. Through the confusion, I recognized him. Marcus Thompson, the supposedly dead witness. "Order!" the judge thundered, banging his gavel. Marcus was quickly secured by federal agents. Agent Martinez approached the bench, speaking urgently to the judge. "Your Honor," she announced, "Mr. Thompson faked his death after an attempt on his life. He's been in protective custody, gathering additional evidence." Winston stood abruptly. "This is absurd. I demand—" "Sit down, Mr. Hicks," the judge ordered. Mr. Thompson approached the bench. As Marcus was sworn in, I watched Calvin whispering frantically to his grandfather. Winston silenced him with a glare. "Mr. Thompson," the prosecutor began, "please tell us about the night Michael Cox confronted Winston Hicks about the patent theft." Marcus's voice shook but held firm. Michael discovered Winston had been stealing his innovations for years. When he threatened to expose everything, Winston said he'd destroy both his families, starting with Shanice. "You're lying!" Winston shouted, rising again. "I recorded everything," Marcus continued, pulling out a phone, "including Winston ordering Calvin to arrange Michael's murder." Calvin crumbled. "Grandfather, you promised they wouldn't find out." "Shut up, you fool!" Winston hissed. But Calvin was breaking. "I can't do this anymore. He made me help poison Dad's medication. Said it would look like a stroke." The courtroom exploded. Winston lunged at Calvin, but security intercepted him. As they wrestled him back, something fell from his pocket, a small vial. Agent Martinez snatched it up. "Your Honor, I believe we've just found evidence of premeditated murder." Winston fought against the guards. "You're all nothing without me. I made this family." "No," I said, my voice carrying over the chaos. "You destroyed this family. Dad spent his life trying to protect us from you, and now we're finally making it right. The judge called for order as Winston was handcuffed. Calvin broke down completely, confessing everything. Court officers led them both away as reporters scrambled for the doors. Mara rushed to hug me as I stepped down from the witness stand. Mom joined us, tears streaming down her face. "It's really over," Mara whispered. Bruce approached with Marcus. "Not quite. There's still the matter of your father's estate. Given the circumstances, the original will is now contested." "I don't care about the money," I said. "But I do," Mara insisted. "Dad wanted you to have your share. It's time to honor his real wishes." Marcus cleared his throat. "There's something else. Michael left a video message, in case the truth ever came out. Would you like to see it?" We gathered in Bruce's office, where Marcus set up his laptop. Dad's face appeared on screen, recorded just days before his death. "My daughters," he began, looking tired but determined. "If you're watching this, the truth has finally come to light. Shanice, my firstborn, my greatest regret was letting Winston tear us apart. Mara, you helped me stay strong when I wanted to give up. Together, you're more powerful than any empire Winston built. I love you both. Make things right. Be the family I couldn't protect." As the video ended, Mara took my hand. "He did protect us. He gave us the weapons to fight back." "And now?" Mom asked softly. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw Dad's strength in her eyes. "Now we rebuild, together." Outside, news helicopters circled the courthouse as Winston's empire crumbled. But inside that office, something stronger was rising from the ashes. A family bound by truth, justice, and love. The verdict came down like thunder, guilty on all counts. Winston's face remained stone cold as the judge read out his sentence: 30 years without possibility of parole. Calvin received 15 years with a chance of early release for his cooperation. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. "Ms. Rose, how does it feel to bring down one of the country's most powerful businessmen? Ms. Cox, will you take over Hicks International?" Mara gripped my hand as we pushed through the crowd. "No questions today," Bruce announced, shielding us. Back at Dad's mansion, now legally split between Mara and me, we gathered in his study. The room still held his presence: family photos he'd kept hidden, engineering awards on the walls, and that familiar leather chair behind his desk. "The board wants to meet," Bruce said, reviewing messages on his phone. "Hicks International is in freefall. They need leadership." "They need more than that," I replied. "They need a complete overhaul." Mara nodded. "The company's built on stolen patents and corrupt deals. We have to make it right." A knock at the door interrupted us. Agent Martinez entered with a team, carrying boxes. "We've finished processing your father's private safe," she announced. "There's something you both need to see." She pulled out a thick folder labeled Restoration Plan. Inside were detailed documents, all in Dad's handwriting. "He had everything planned," Mara breathed, scanning the pages. "Lists of every stolen patent, every wronged inventor, every corrupt contract, and proposals to make amends." "Look at this," I pointed to a section. He wanted to transform the company into an innovation incubator, supporting independent inventors and small startups. "There's more," Agent Martinez added, producing another document. "A list of employees who helped him gather evidence. People still in the company who want to help rebuild." Mom, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up. "Your father always said the best revenge is living well and doing right." Aaliyah arrived with coffee and takeout. "Have you seen the news? Winston's other victims are coming forward. It's a tsunami of revelations." My phone buzzed. A message from Calvin's lawyer. "Calvin wants to meet," I told the room. "Says he has information about other corrupt executives." "It's a trap," Aaliyah warned. "No," Mara said softly. "He's trying to make amends. I know my brother. He was trapped in grandfather's web too." The next morning, we visited Calvin in prison. He looked smaller somehow, without Winston's shadow looming over him. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "To both of you. I was a coward." "Yes, you were," I agreed. "But you finally did the right thing." He slid a notebook across the table. "These are names, dates, offshore account numbers. Everything I know about grandfather's partners. They're still out there, still hurting people." Mara touched his hand. "Thank you." Back at the mansion, we called an emergency board meeting. The conference room filled with nervous executives and shareholders. "Hicks International is dead," I announced, standing at the head of the table. "But from its ashes, we're building something new, something honest." Mara unveiled the presentation screen, showing Dad's plans. "Welcome to Rose Innovations, a company built on integrity, not intimidation, on collaboration, not theft." "This is insane," one executive protested. "You'll destroy everything." "No," Bruce countered. "They'll fix everything. And anyone who doesn't like it can leave, preferably before the FBI reviews their involvement in past crimes." The room grew quiet. "We're offering a chance at redemption," I continued. "Help us make this right, or step aside." One by one, people began nodding. A young engineer stood up. "I worked with your father. He protected us from Winston, gave us hope. I'm in." Others followed. By day's end, we had a core team committed to the transformation. That evening, Mara and I sat in Dad's study, sharing a bottle of his favorite whiskey. "He'd be proud," she said, looking at his photo. "Not just of exposing grandfather, but of what we're building now." "I wish he could see it," I replied. "See us working together." "He does." Mom appeared in the doorway with Ilea. "And he'd love knowing his daughters are stronger together than any force trying to tear them apart." Ilea raised her glass. "To Michael, the man who planted the seeds of justice." "To Dad," Mara and I said together. Outside, the sun set on our first day as legitimate business leaders. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but we faced them with clear consciences and united hearts. Winston had built his empire on fear and greed. We would rebuild it on truth and justice, the legacy our father always dreamed of. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time, the future looked bright with possibility. The morning sun streamed through Dad's study windows as I signed the final document. Bruce collected the papers with a satisfied smile. "That's the last of Winston's victims compensated," he announced. "Every stolen patent returned, every wronged inventor repaid." "With interest," Mara added, rubbing her tired eyes. She'd spent countless nights tracking down people Winston had destroyed over the decades. My phone buzzed. A text from the prison warden. "Calvin's being released early for good behavior," I told Mara. "He wants to know if we'll meet him." "Will you?" Mom asked, entering with coffee. "We already did," Mara replied. "Yesterday. He's going to work with Agent Martinez, helping prosecute Winston's remaining conspirators." A knock at the door interrupted us. Ilea entered with Marcus, both grinning. "You need to see this," Ilea said, turning on the TV. A news anchor appeared. "In a historic moment for corporate accountability, Rose Innovations has just been named Most Ethical Company of the Year." The phoenix that rose from Hicks International's ashes has become a model for corporate reform. "That's not all," Marcus added, handing me a tablet. "Remember that young engineer who stayed loyal to your dad? Her team just developed something revolutionary." I scrolled through the technical specifications, my eyes widening. "This could change everything in renewable energy." "Dad would have loved this," Mara said softly. "Real innovation, helping real people." The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Rose, Ms. Cox," our secretary announced. "They're ready for you in the conference room." We entered to find the room packed with familiar faces. Inventors Dad had secretly supported, employees who'd helped expose Winston, even some of our father's old college friends. "Welcome to the first annual Michael Cox Innovation Summit," I announced, "where small inventors get the support they deserve." "And where no one has to compromise their integrity to succeed," Mara added. As we watched inventors presenting their ideas, Mom squeezed my hand. "Look what you've built from all that pain," she whispered. "What we built," I corrected. "All of us." Later that evening, we gathered in Dad's study for what had become our nightly tradition. Mara poured the whiskey while Aaliyah ordered dinner. "I visited grandfather today," Mara said quietly. "He's dying." The room fell silent. "He wanted to apologize?" Mom asked. Mara shook her head. "No. He wanted to warn me that we're making a mistake. Said empires aren't built on kindness." "But legacies are," I replied. "Dad proved that." Bruce arrived with a package. "Speaking of legacies, this came from the storage unit Michael kept secret from Winston." Inside, we found photos, letters, and a small velvet box. The note attached read, "For my daughters, when the truth finally sets us free." The box contained 2 identical lockets. Inside each was a tiny photo of Dad holding baby me, with space for a second picture. "We should take a new photo," Mara suggested, tears in her eyes. "All of us together." As we posed for the picture, Mom, Mara, Aaliyah, Bruce, Marcus, and me, I felt Dad's presence stronger than ever. "The board meeting tomorrow will be interesting," Bruce mused. "Those old guard executives are still fighting the changes." "Let them fight," I said. "We're not backing down." "Never again," Mara agreed. My phone chimed with a message from Agent Martinez. "Winston's appeals denied. Justice stands." "It's really over," Mom breathed. "No," I said, looking at the wall where Dad's patents now hung proudly. "It's really beginning." Aaliyah raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To family," Mara added. "To truth," Mom said. "To Dad," I finished, "who taught us that real strength isn't in what you take, but in what you give back." As night fell over the city, lights twinkled in the Rose Innovations Tower, no longer a monument to greed, but a beacon of hope. In offices throughout the building, teams worked on projects that would help people, not hurt them. In labs funded by our new innovation program, small inventors pursued their dreams without fear of theft or exploitation. Dad's journal sat open on his desk, its final pages no longer filled with evidence of crimes, but with our own entries, stories of restoration, redemption, and rebirth. The empire Winston built through fear had crumbled, but something far stronger had taken its place. A legacy built on love, truth, and justice. I touched the locket around my neck, feeling its weight, the perfect balance of past and present, of pain and healing, of endings and beginnings. We had done more than expose the truth. We had transformed it into something beautiful. And somewhere I knew Dad was smiling.
Emily Morrison awakened by the sunlit window. The 8-year-old girl's blue eyes slowly scanned the room. White lace curtains swayed in the gentle breeze, revealing the summer sky of Maine stretching beyond. The crisp morning air, characteristic of summer dawns, flowed through the open window. In the distance, the early morning church bells quietly marked the time. The spacious room was furnished with antiques, all chosen by her birth mother Sarah. A Victorian dresser, mahogany bookshelf, and deep green velvet curtains, everything spoke of her mother's refined taste. The bookshelf still held cherished books like Bambi and A Little Princess that her mother used to read to her. On the bedside table, her mother's heirloom clock showed 7 o'clock. Beside it lay precious mementos of her mother, a small perfume bottle, a pearl bracelet, and their last Polaroid photo together. Emily reached out her small hand toward the large photograph displayed in the center of the room. The woman in the photo, her birth mother Sarah, smiled kindly with the same blue eyes as Emily. It was their last summer photo, taken in the garden with her mother wearing a light blue dress, embracing Emily amidst blooming roses. Both wore identical smiles. "Good morning, Mama," Emily never failed to give her daily greeting. Her fingertips felt the cold glass as she touched the photo. The large white colonial house was wrapped in a somewhat cold atmosphere. One of the most historic mansions in the Falmouth district, it had lost its warmth after her mother's death. Footsteps on the luxurious carpet echoed hollowly in the hallway. Portrait paintings on the walls silently watched over the little girl. From downstairs came the voice of her stepmother Victoria, as usual talking to someone on the phone. Her tone always seemed to carry a mix of impatience and calculation. As Emily descended the stairs for breakfast, the ivory chandelier caught the morning light, casting a soft glow. Looking down from the second floor, the entrance hall's stained glass windows, chosen by her mother, filtered in colorful light. "Good morning, Victoria." When Emily entered the kitchen, her stepmother returned a perfunctory "good morning" without lifting her perfectly made-up face. Victoria, dressed in a designer suit, looked as if she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Her expensive Gucci handbag sat on the kitchen island counter, while her latest Motorola cell phone kept ringing. The polished stainless steel sink showed barely any signs of use. Her father William was nowhere to be seen. As branch manager of Riverside Trust Bank, he had been coming home late and leaving early lately, with fewer opportunities to see him. Emily worried about his tired expression. Before his marriage, her father always made time to spend weekends with Emily. They had a routine of having breakfast at the local diner followed by playing in the park on holidays. After marrying his new wife, her father gradually changed. Recently, she often heard voices from his study late into the night. Through the window, the river flowing near Portland glistened beyond the backyard. The water's surface shimmered silver in the morning mist. Emily recalled memories with her mother. "This river has dangerous deep spots, but also many shallow areas," her mother's voice still echoed in her ears. Playing in the river with her mother was Emily's most precious memory. Her mother taught her not only how to swim but also how to read the river's flow. Nature can be dangerous, but if you observe carefully, it will always show you a safe path. Emily had pondered the meaning of these words many times in her heart. On this increasingly hot Saturday morning, an unusual atmosphere permeated the house. The old radio announced that this day would see record-breaking temperatures. The announcer predicted temperatures exceeding 93 degrees Fahrenheit. By the kitchen window, the African violet her mother had treasured seemed to shrink ominously. "Let's go on a family picnic today." Emily tilted her head at her stepmother's sudden suggestion. This was the first time in their 2 years of marriage that Victoria had proposed a family outing. Emily felt uneasy about this sudden change in her stepmother, who usually avoided going out, saying, "Sunlight is the enemy of skin." Her voice carried an urgency that replaced her usual haughtiness. Even more surprisingly, her father, who would normally decline citing work, agreed without hesitation. "Yes, I suppose it would be nice to go out as a family once in a while." His voice had a somewhat powerless resonance. Emily could see his hand trembling slightly as he held his coffee cup, eyes fixed on the newspaper. Her stepmother began making sandwiches with unfamiliar movements. Beneath her perfect makeup, signs of unease were visible. She repeatedly checked the time and her cell phone. These awkward movements were unlike her usual perfectionist self as a luxury real estate broker. Emily noticed her hands trembling slightly as she cut the bread. Her fingers showed unusual haste as she layered ham and cheese. Emily changed into a light blue dress and put on white socks with brown leather shoes. These were the last clothes her mother had bought her. As she arranged her long brown hair, she gazed at herself in the mirror. An anxious expression dwelt in her blue eyes, identical to her mother's in the photograph. The girl in the mirror wore an uneasy expression, as if sensing something. When they got into the car, Emily caught her stepmother and father exchanging glances in the rearview mirror. Her heart began to race. 2 years after her mother's death, the existence of the $50 million inheritance had definitely changed the family atmosphere. From the picnic basket placed in the back seat, something cold seemed to emanate. Her father's Oldsmobile Cutlass quietly pulled away. As Emily watched the scenery flow past the window, she remembered her last conversation with her mother. "You'll certainly live strongly. When you need it, I'll surely protect you." At that time, she hadn't yet understood the true meaning of those words exchanged in the hospital room. The car left town and headed toward a deserted riverside. In the morning mist, tree shadows swayed ominously. The car arrived at a secluded riverside. The sound of tires on gravel was jarring in the strange stillness. Emily's heart filled with a mixture of nostalgia and anxiety. This place thick with trees was a memorable spot she often visited with her mother. It was famous as a dangerous river with deep pools alternating with shallow areas. A faded red warning sign still stood, though weathered. Her mother had always explained the precautions for swimming in this river. "There are whirlpools in the deep parts. But the shallows are safe. Look at the color of the stones on the riverbed. Places with white stones are shallow, places with black stones are deep." Her mother's words came back vividly now. "No one will come here." Her stepmother's voice rang out higher than usual. Her cheeks twitched slightly beneath her perfect makeup. Her expensive high heels sank into the soft earth. She had brought sneakers as backup, something she would never normally wear. This unnaturalness made Emily's heart pound. Her father silently began unloading the picnic supplies from the car. His movements had a somewhat mechanical, emotionless quality. There was no trace left of the kind father who used to take Emily to the park every weekend. As Emily got out of the car, she observed her surroundings. Indeed, there was no one around. Only the spire of St. Luke's Church was visible in the distance. The sound of church bells striking 9:30 carried faintly on the wind. The picnic blanket was spread out, and her stepmother's awkwardly made sandwiches were laid out. There was a Maine specialty lobster roll, but it was carelessly stuffed. A humble homemade lunch unlike her stepmother who only frequented upscale restaurants. Her father fidgeted restlessly, checking his cell phone repeatedly. The numbers 917 on the phone screen gleamed brightly in the sunlight. The early morning river surface was still shrouded in mist. A fog rising from the water covered the surface like a white veil. Morning sunlight filtering through the trees painted the mist golden. "It's getting hot," her stepmother remarked. Today's heat, forecast to exceed 93 degrees Fahrenheit, was stifling even in the morning. Light reflecting off the river surface dazzled Emily's eyes. The voices of birds her mother had loved were absent today. "Emily, come here. You can see fish. Suddenly pulled to the riverside by her father's hand. His hand was cold and trembling slightly. The touch of his hand was completely different from the father Emily knew. For the first time, Emily looked directly into her father's eyes. There, unfamiliar emotions swirled. Sadness, regret, or fear. The moment she felt a heavy weight on her back, Emily understood everything. Her stepmother's anxiety beneath perfect makeup, her father's trembling hands, the unnatural picnic suggestion. The meaning of it all became clear in an instant. "Mama, help me," she cried in her heart. And the next moment, Emily was thrown into the cold water. The water was colder than expected. Emily desperately held her breath while suppressing panic. In the murky water, her mother's voice came back to her. "Panic is fatal. Slowly, stay calm. When you hold your breath, first curl your body into a ball. The buoyancy will naturally make you float." That teaching was now saving Emily's life. Underwater, memories with her mother flashed by like a film reel. Picnics by the river, chasing butterflies in the afternoon, the warmth of her mother's hand. "You'll be all right." Her mother's final words strongly supported Emily's heart. Her stepmother's voice could be heard from above the surface. "Search. Make sure she's definitely sunk." That voice carried a madness she had never heard before. Emily opened her eyes. Even in the murky water, she could faintly see the white stones marking the shallow area. Her father began searching the water, creating splashes. Emily instinctively swam toward the deep part, desperately moving her body while remembering how to swim as her mother had taught her. The riverbed formation her mother had taught her now became her lifeline. Don't fight the current. Swim diagonally. Then you'll surely reach a safe place. Can you see her? Her stepmother's voice carried growing anxiety. It's murky, hard to see, her father's confused voice. She must have been swept away. With this current. Her stepmother's cold voice carried across the water. The sound of her removing her heels and changing into sneakers could be heard. But if she's found downstream? Her father's voice wavered anxiously. It's fine. I researched that this river has had many missing persons. No one will be suspicious. Let's hurry back. Emily's lungs began screaming for air. She needed oxygen. But she couldn't surface yet. Her mother's voice guided her. Beyond this deep pool, there's a shallow area. If you let the current take you. The teachings from her memory naturally moved Emily's body. The water's flow was surely guiding her to safety. The sound of their footsteps grew distant. The crunch of pebbles. Car doors closing. The engine sound gradually fading away. Still, Emily desperately held her breath at the spot her mother had taught her about. Finally, complete silence fell. Sunlight reflecting off the water's surface felt like her mother's smile. Emily was certain now. Her mother had known until the end that this day would come. That's why she had so carefully taught her how to swim in the river. Her 9th birthday. Just months away from when the inheritance rights would take effect. All the pieces of the plan were becoming clear. And her mother's love had surely protected Emily's life. In the murky water, the girl's consciousness began to fade. However, in her heart, the promise to her mother shone brightly. I will surely live. Just as Mama taught me. Under the water, Emily's blue eyes gleamed with strong determination. After the footsteps had completely disappeared, Emily slowly began to move. Her lungs screamed for oxygen. The edges of her consciousness began wavering like black haze. The shallow part of the river, that Mama taught me about. While desperately fighting off approaching unconsciousness, she recalled her mother's teachings. In the murky water, with lungs almost at their limit, Emily carefully moved forward. Enduring the sting in her eyes as she kept them open underwater, she checked the color of the riverbed stones. From black stones to white ones. Yes, the place with white stones is shallow. Her mother's voice guided Emily forward. The misty underwater world was strangely quiet. Schools of fish slowly swam around Emily. Suddenly, her feet touched the riverbed. Emily carefully, stumblingly stood up. The moment her face broke the surface, fresh air rushed into her lungs. While coughing, she desperately took in oxygen. Her throat burned with pain. But she was definitely alive. Her reflection in the water's surface seemed to resemble her mother. Shivering and soaking wet, Emily checked her surroundings. No sign of her stepmother and father. No sound of cars. Only St. Luke's church bells tolling 10 o'clock in the distance. Hiding in the shadows of trees, Emily crawled onto the shore. Small stones painfully pricked her knees. Her light blue dress was muddy, and her brown leather shoes were heavy with water. Water dripped from her long hair. This dress, the last thing her mother bought her, would probably never be the same. However, despite the cold and fatigue throughout her body, Emily's mind was remarkably calm. The eyes of the girl who had returned from the brink of death held a mature light. Summer flowers bloomed along the riverside. She recalled their names one by one as her mother had taught her. This is black-eyed Susan, this is New England aster. By tracing these memories, Emily tried to calm herself. Her mother's words came back to her. This path leads to the church. If you're ever in trouble, seek out Father Margaret there. He's an old friend of mine. Had her mother really predicted everything? Deep love and gratitude for her mother welled up in Emily's heart. Until the very end, her mother had prepared to protect her daughter. Shivering from cold, Emily began walking through the forest, trying to avoid being seen. A path she had walked many times with her mother. Sunlight filtering through the trees made her water droplet-filled hair sparkle. Though her feet were unsteady, she moved forward one step at a time, surely. Small birds watched the strange sight of the girl. Her wet socks rubbed against her feet, probably causing blisters. But she couldn't stop. Her mother's voice pushed Emily forward. You're a strong girl. My precious treasure. Repeating these words in her heart, Emily kept walking. Several times she heard car sounds, and each time Emily hid in the shadows of trees. Her heart pounded. Perhaps her stepmother and father had returned. To check. To erase evidence. She reacted sensitively to the sound of stepping on fallen leaves. Even the sound of squirrels dropping nuts made Emily tremble. Though the summer sun grew stronger, Emily's body grew colder from her wet clothes. She could tell her lips were turning purple. Still, she couldn't stop walking. Events from the past raced through Emily's mind like a film reel. 2 years since her mother's death. Her mother's end, processed as an unnatural accident. The sudden appearance of her stepmother. After the lavish wedding, her father's gradual changes. Weekend picnics becoming less frequent, hushed arguments heard from her father's study late at night. And now, just months away from her 9th birthday. How her stepmother's gaze had changed as the inheritance time approached. All the dots were now connecting. The old church's spire began to appear through the trees. Emily's steps grew slightly faster. A place her mother had trusted. The white walls reflected the morning sun, shining like angel wings. Surely, here would be safe. Before the weathered church door, Emily took a deep breath. The image of the Virgin Mary in the stained glass somehow reminded her of her mother. With trembling hands, she knocked on the heavy door. Once, twice, 3 times. Each knock echoed through the quiet church. A faint scent of incense drifted from the old wooden door. The door opened, revealing Father Margaret's surprised expression. "Oh my, Emily." The priest's eyes fixed on the soaking wet girl. "What happened?" His voice carried a tone as if he had already realized something. Wrapped in a warm blanket, Emily slowly began to tell her story. With a trembling voice, but never showing tears. With the strength inherited from her mother, she told everything. The priest occasionally gasped, quietly listening to the girl's words. Sometimes murmuring her mother's name nostalgically. Just then, a breaking news report began playing on the church's old television. The tube screen flickered. Breaking news. Today, an 8-year-old girl reportedly drowned in a river in Maine. Police and fire departments are currently conducting a search. According to witnesses. The images of her father and stepmother on screen. Both showing expressions of grief in perfect acting. Her stepmother dabbing her eyes with an expensive handkerchief. Her father hanging his head. But Emily could see it. The cold calculation beneath their performance. Emily whispered softly toward the screen. "Mama, I lived because I believed in your words. And I'll keep on living." There was no more hesitation in her eyes. Light streaming through the church's stained glass windows painted Emily's wet hair in rainbow colors. Father Margaret picked up the telephone receiver, beginning to tell the truth to the police. His hand holding the black receiver trembled slightly. Outside, a new rain had quietly begun to fall. As summer sunshine and rain intermingled, the truth was about to be revealed. The police interrogation room had a surprisingly warm atmosphere. A kind-eyed female detective sat across from Emily. A cup of hot cocoa sat on the desk. "You did very well." Emily nodded slowly at the detective's words. Though she had changed into dry clothes, she still felt as if the river's coldness lingered somewhere in her body. During the interrogation, all the truth came to light. Even her mother's accidental death 2 years ago possibly had been planned. Signs of tampering with her mother's car brakes. And the beautiful real estate broker who appeared right after that. Victoria had planned everything from the start. Her father, being questioned in another room, confessed everything. She appeared at my bank as an investor, and from there deepened our relationship. His exhausted voice drifted into the interrogation room. The $50 million inheritance. After Sarah's death, the inheritance rights were frozen until Emily turned 9. Her mother, together with her lawyer, had inserted that clause. The fact that her stepmother had no inheritance rights at all. Everything had been a strategy to protect her beloved daughter. Your mother was a wise woman, explained her mother's lawyer who had been called to the police station. She had prepared everything in case something happened to her. Emily nodded quietly. She now understood the depth of her mother's love. That night, Emily fell asleep at the home of her mother's best friends. In the soft bed, tears finally flowed. Fear, relief, and deep gratitude for her mother. All emotions streamed down her cheeks as warm tears. 1 year later, Emily was living with her new family. Her mother's best friend Jane and her husband Tom loved Emily like their own daughter. The garden bloomed with flowers her mother had loved, and on holidays, the family cooked together. The warm daily life gradually healed Emily's heart. A letter from her father in prison arrived as autumn deepened. I know this can't be forgiven. But I'm truly sorry. Words of apology written in trembling handwriting. Emily stared at the letter for a long time. Then, her mother's diary was found. In the old leather-bound diary, deep love for her daughter was written in delicate handwriting. Even if something happens to me, Emily will surely survive. Because she's my beloved strong child. Emily touched these words again and again. On her 9th birthday, Emily was celebrated surrounded by her mother's best friends and old friends. 9 candles on the cake flickered gently. Happy birthday, Emily. Wrapped in warm voices, the girl closed her eyes. She had one wish. Mama, I'll live feeling your love. That weekend, Emily visited the river with her new family. There was no fear anymore. The summer sunlight reflecting on the water's surface felt like her mother's smile. Mama, I didn't forget your words. That's why I could live. Emily's words echoed gently across the water's surface. Wildflowers on the riverbank swayed in the wind. Emily remembered each flower name her mother had taught her. Each time, she felt as if she could hear her mother's voice. There stood a girl, protected by her new family and wrapped in her mother's love. The summer sunlight gently illuminated her cheeks. Emily's eyes held a light never seen before. It was the light of determination to live strongly, overcoming sadness. And above all, it was the radiance of deep love inherited from her mother. One hot summer afternoon in Arizona, Patricia Reynolds was watering the flowers in her garden while gazing up at the scorching sky. The thermometer read 110 degrees Fahrenheit. As the scent of sage and lavender wafted through the air, she could hear children's voices in the distance. Elementary school students were making their way home along the sidewalk that served as their regular route, carefully choosing the shaded areas to avoid the intense sunlight. Hello, Mrs. Reynolds. Be careful on your way home, dears. It's especially hot today, so make sure you drink plenty of water. Patricia waved with a smile. The habits ingrained from her 35 years as a nurse came naturally, even in retirement. Caring for children's well-being had become an integral part of her life. After finishing her garden work, she wiped the sweat from her neck with a towel and returned to the living room. The setting sun gently illuminated photographs displayed on the white shelves by the window. One photo was taken just a year ago, right before her daughter Karen, son-in-law Brian, and beloved granddaughter Lily moved to England. Lily's bright smile still seemed to warm the room. Next to the photo hung colorful drawings that Lily had made. "Looks like she's made new friends over there." Checking Lily's social media had become part of Patricia's daily routine. She liked a photo of Lily with her friends, all wearing navy blue uniforms at their Manchester school. A slightly wistful smile crossed her face as she read the comment, "Had so much fun with our science experiment today." Due to the time difference, she would have to wait another 3 days for their regular Sunday video call. It had been 5 years since she lost her husband, George. The first year was hard. Spending time alone in a house filled with memories of her husband of 40 years had been more difficult than she'd imagined. But things were different now. Even at 64, Patricia led a fulfilling life. 3 days a week, she volunteered at Valley Presbyterian Church, reading to children. The kids loved Grandma's story time. She took pride in maintaining her garden and occasionally played piano at the nearby senior center. She had found her own kind of happiness in the quiet residential area of Paradise Valley, on the outskirts of Phoenix. That day, too, should have been just another ordinary afternoon. It was when she was returning home after finishing her grocery shopping at Fry's food store. She noticed a Paradise Valley Police Department patrol car parked in front of her white gate. 2 officers were waiting by the gate in the unbearable heat. "Mrs. Reynolds." The younger officer stepped forward. Sweat had soaked through the collar of his uniform. "Yes, that's me. Is there a problem?" Patricia responded anxiously, still holding her shopping bags. Though concerned about the ice cream melting, she straightened her back upon noticing the officer's serious expressions. "We have a young girl in custody for attempted shoplifting. She claims to be your granddaughter, Lily Mitchell." Patricia's mind went blank. "What? But there must be some mistake. My granddaughter moved to England a year ago. She lives in Manchester." "Yes, that's what she's telling us. Could you come down to the station to help us verify?" In her confusion, Patricia pulled out her phone and tried to contact her daughter and son-in-law with trembling fingers. But due to the time difference with England, there was no response. Frantically checking Lily's social media, she found a photo posted just an hour ago, Lily smiling with her friends in a Manchester school classroom. Patricia's thoughts hung suspended between reality and the image on her smartphone. Unable to hide her distress, Patricia accompanied the police to the station. The evening streetscape viewed from the car window seemed eerily different from usual. The reflection from the road still blazed intensely into the car. What on earth is going on? She recalled the family photo displayed in her living room. Then something struck her. Had she just imagined that Brian's expression in the photo seemed somewhat pensive? She remembered her usually cheerful son-in-law wearing an unusually rigid expression. Upon arriving at the police station, she found a girl crying in the waiting room. She sat hunched over in a navy blue uniform, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, breathing heavily. When she lifted her face, Patricia's heart nearly stopped. "Grandma, please help me. That voice brought Patricia's confusion to its peak. The girl before her looked exactly like Lily. Same age, same features. But she definitely wasn't Lily. There was something decisively different lurking in the depths of those eyes. During her time as a nurse, Patricia had encountered many children facing difficulties. Abuse, illness, separation from family. She had comforted children bearing various kinds of pain. From that experience, she couldn't miss the anxiety and loneliness dwelling in this girl's eyes. These weren't the eyes of a child who had merely played a prank or committed a minor transgression. Blood ties aren't necessarily everything when it comes to family bonds. That was a lesson deeply etched in Patricia's heart from her years as a nurse. Now, those words resonated with new meaning. The waiting room at Paradise Valley Police Station was so cold that the air conditioning stung her skin. In stark contrast to the scorching heat outside, Patricia sat down beside the girl. "Her name is Grace Wilson, 10 years old," Detective Jenkins began, looking down at his file. "She attempted to shoplift bread and juice from Fry's food store. When approached by staff, she gave your address and name." Patricia looked at Grace. The girl sat with her hands clasped in her lap, head bowed. The collar of her uniform blouse was damp with sweat. "Would you like some water?" When Patricia offered, Grace gave a slight nod. As she walked to the vending machine, Patricia's mind was in turmoil. Why did this child know her house? Why did she call her Grandma? And above all, why did she look so remarkably like Lily? Grace accepted the water with a quiet, "Thank you." The gesture was so similar to Lily's that it made Patricia's heart ache. "Grace, how do you know about my house?" The girl took a sip of water before hesitantly speaking. "My mom told me." "Your mom?" "Last month, she passed away." Grace's voice trembled. "Then I was put in a facility." Patricia's professional instincts told her the child was telling the truth. Yet she seemed to be hiding something more. "How did you get here?" "By long-distance bus." "The money?" "I found it among Mom's belongings." As they talked, an old envelope slipped from Grace's bag. When Patricia moved to pick it up, a photograph fell out. It was a photo from about 20 years ago. A young couple smiled at what appeared to be a college campus. The man was... Patricia's breath caught. It was unmistakably a younger Brian. "Mrs. Reynolds," a new voice called. A woman had entered the room. "I'm Martha Collins from Child Protective Services." Patricia came back to herself. She returned the photo to the envelope and explained the situation. Ms. Collins listened with an understanding expression. "Could I have some time to think about this overnight?" Patricia asked. "I'll come back tomorrow. I promise." Grace's eyes flickered with anxiety. Patricia gently squeezed the girl's hand. "It's going to be all right. I'll definitely come back tomorrow." After returning home, she finally managed to connect with her daughter and son-in-law in England. Patricia felt relief wash over her at seeing Lily's cheerful face on the video call. However, Brian seemed different from usual. "Dad, you don't look well," Lily said worriedly through the screen. "Just a bit tired, that's all," Brian forced a smile. After ending the call, Patricia picked up the family photo from the living room. She compared it with the young Brian in the photograph. Grace's eye color, the way she expressed herself, and that pensive profile she sometimes showed. Everything seemed to connect. During her nursing career, Patricia had encountered many family secrets. Everyone has parts of their past they can't share. What matters is having the courage to face the truth. The night deepened. When she closed her eyes, she saw Grace's anxious expression. The loneliness of a girl who had lost her mother and traveled alone to an unfamiliar place. Surely there was a greater truth hidden behind all this. She looked at the photograph again. What did Brian know? Or rather, what was he trying to remember? The clock showed midnight. Patricia stood up and began preparing for tomorrow. Her years as a nurse had taught her something. Sometimes life's biggest decisions should follow the heart's voice rather than logic. Tomorrow, she would return to the police station and meet Grace. And face the truth this child had been carrying. Her heart quietly told her this was the right choice. The next morning, as Patricia drove to Paradise Valley Police Station, the Arizona sunrise blazed through her windshield. She glanced at the brown cardboard box on the passenger seat. Inside were breakfast and a change of clothes she had prepared for Grace last night, along with an old album she had carefully preserved. When she arrived at the station, Miss Collins from Child Protective Services was already waiting. "Good morning. How is Grace doing?" She ate a little breakfast. It seemed she barely slept last night. Patricia took a deep breath before entering the waiting room. Grace sat in a chair by the window, gazing outside. She wore the same uniform as yesterday, but her hair had been neatly combed. "Good morning, Grace." The girl turned around, relief washing over her face. However, anxiety quickly returned to her eyes. "You really came back. I promised, didn't I?" Patricia sat down beside her and took out a small paper bag from the cardboard box. "You must still be hungry. I brought blueberry muffins." Grace accepted the muffin hesitantly, as if she wasn't used to such kindness. "Grace, did you find something about my house in your mother's belongings?" The girl nodded slowly and pulled out the old envelope from her bag. Inside were the photograph Patricia had glimpsed yesterday, along with handwritten diary entries and notes. "Mom." Grace paused, searching for words. "She wrote that she wanted to tell me the truth when I was older." Patricia nodded quietly, waiting for Grace to continue. "But when she found out she had terminal cancer, before I went to the facility, she told me everything." Grace's voice quivered. "About my father. And about you, Grandma." The notes contained Brian's name and Patricia's address. "Your father is Brian Mitchell. Patricia, who lives at this address, is his mother-in-law. I know she's a very kind person." Turning through the diary pages revealed memories from 20 years ago. Meeting Brian in college. A brief romance. Then separation. She had returned to her hometown without telling Brian about the pregnancy. "Mom talked about you until the very end." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. She said, "Patricia will understand." Patricia silently embraced Grace. The girl's body trembled slightly. "You've been so brave, coming all this way by yourself." Just then, Miss Collins knocked and entered. "Mrs. Reynolds, do you have a moment?" the three of them held a discussion. Patricia offered to become Grace's temporary guardian. DNA testing was proposed. All procedures would be handled through Child Protective Services. That afternoon, Patricia called England again. This time, she requested to speak with Brian alone. "Brian, do you remember someone named Lisa Wilson?" A long silence followed on the other end of the line. From a literature class, 20 years ago, Brian's voice was hoarse. But she suddenly disappeared. "A girl named Grace was just found in front of my house. She's Lisa's orphaned daughter," Patricia spoke gently but clearly. "She looks just like you." Another silence. Then a deep sigh. "I didn't know. Really, I had no idea." Brian's voice trembled. "Is there anything I can?" "First, talk to Karen. And could you possibly return home soon?" After ending the call, Patricia went out to the garden. The scent of sage and lavender drifted in the evening air. While watering the flowers, she contemplated what lay ahead. This new form of family wouldn't be an easy journey. But her experience as a nurse, facing countless families over the years, had taught her something. Healing wounded hearts takes time, love, and above all, the courage to embrace truth. Grace's anxious eyes at the police station. Lily's bright smile during video calls. The future of these two girls kindled hope in Patricia's heart. A week later, the DNA test results arrived, confirming everything Grace had said was true. Around the same time, word came that Brian and Karen had decided to return home immediately. Patricia had cleared a space on the living room shelf for a new family photo. It would mark the beginning of a new family story, woven with love and truth. Patricia was certain this would be one of the most beautiful decisions of her life. One morning a month later, the scent of butter wafted from Patricia's kitchen. It had been 2 weeks since Grace started school. This morning, she was making special pancake breakfast. "Grandma, is this right?" Grace brought over a bowl, her cheeks dusted with flour. "Perfect," Patricia gently wiped the flour from the girl's cheek. "You really do love cooking, don't you?" "Yes. I used to cook with Mom all the time." Grace's voice no longer carried the same sadness as before. She was learning to speak of memories more gently. Their shadows danced in the steam rising from the griddle. Outside the window, the Arizona morning sun illuminated the lavender in the garden. A new life had been added to this familiar scene. It's Sunday. Time for our video call with Lily and everyone. Grace's hands paused momentarily. A hint of nervousness still lingered. Last week's first call had been awkward. The sisters, meeting through the screen, couldn't hide their surprise at each other's appearance. But by the end, they had bonded over their shared love of the same manga series. "I borrowed The Promised Neverland from the library," the one Lily mentioned. Grace's face brightened. "Really? Thank you." After breakfast, they sat on the living room sofa. As Patricia powered up the laptop, she reflected on the changes of the past month. Brian and Karen's emergency return. The initial meeting filled with bewilderment and tears. The long family conference after the DNA test provided definitive proof. Karen had shown a complex expression at first. But when she saw Grace's lonely back, her maternal instincts must have awakened. "We want to be your new family," she had said, embracing Grace with warmth Patricia would never forget. Brian was consumed by guilt. "If only I had known sooner," he repeated countless times. But Grace never blamed him. "Mom said, it's nobody's fault," she told him, leaving Brian speechless with emotion. The legal procedures were still ongoing: Grace's custody, school transfer, and arrangements for future family relationships. But the most important part, the emotional preparation, was gradually falling into place. "We're connected." Grace's voice brought Patricia back to the present. The screen showed Lily's smiling face in England, Manchester's cloudy sky visible in the background. "Grace, did you read this week's The Promised Neverland? It was amazing." "I'm still in the middle, no spoilers." As the girls' conversation flowed naturally, Patricia watched from a slight distance. On the screen, Karen and Brian were smiling too. In 2 weeks, Lily would return temporarily for Thanksgiving, their first holiday as a complete family. "Hey, everyone," Karen spoke up. "I have some good news." All eyes turned to the screen. "My work in Manchester will wrap up next spring. And we've decided to move back to Phoenix." Grace caught her breath. Lily shouted, "Yes." "Grace," Brian spoke gently. "From now on, we'll all live together as a family." Patricia saw tears glisten in Grace's eyes. But these were different from before, they were tears of happiness. That afternoon, Patricia was tending to the garden. Grace helped her plant new flowers. "Grandma, what flower is this?" "Blue sage. It's a strong flower. It blooms beautifully no matter the environment." Grace inhaled the scent of soil and quietly said, "Just like Mom." Patricia hugged her granddaughter. The words she had learned as a nurse now resonated with new meaning: blood ties aren't everything in family bonds. At dusk, they hung a newly purchased frame in the living room. It contained their recent family photo, Grace and Patricia, along with Karen, Brian, and Lily joining through video call, all smiling. Perhaps not a perfect picture, but one that told their story perfectly. That night, Patricia wrote in her diary, "Life sometimes gives us unexpected gifts. If the police hadn't come that hot summer day, we would never have found our precious family member. It takes time for wounded hearts to heal. But if you have the courage to face the truth, new happiness always awaits. Now our home has a new smile. Like a gift from heaven." Outside the window, the Arizona stars watched over their new family story with gentle light. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was tending to the hostas in my garden as usual. June in Boston was already embracing the warmth of early summer. I took small sips of cold lemonade from Whole Foods while pulling weeds. Since losing my husband George to a heart attack 3 years ago, this gardening had become my solace. "Ellen, those hydrangeas are stunning," Mrs. Jones called out from across the white picket fence. We'd been good neighbors for over 30 years in this upscale Newton neighborhood, sharing weekend barbecues and Thanksgiving dinners. "Thank you. The colors are much better than last year, aren't they? Maybe it's thanks to the soil George left behind." I stood up and gave a little wave. Even at 63, I'm still working as a human resources manager at Stop and Shop. With over 30 years of experience, I've earned the trust of my staff, and work is fulfilling. But more than anything, my greatest joy was spending weekends with my adorable grandson, Lucas. Every Saturday, he would stay overnight at my house. On Sunday mornings, we would make pancakes together, drowning them in maple syrup, our precious ritual. Until that day. The changes began in mid-May. Lucas, who used to look forward to our weekend walks around Crystal Lake, suddenly became withdrawn. He started refusing outdoor activities and repeatedly said he wanted to live at Grandma's house. He had been such a bright boy, excelling at math in preschool and full of intellectual curiosity. Despite it being June, he insisted on wearing long sleeves and began refusing our weekend sleepovers. My daughter Amy is 34. Before her marriage, we were close, often spending weekends shopping at the mall and chatting for hours over coffee at Starbucks. Now she was buying expensive designer bags one after another, saying, "The salon is doing great. Chanel, Gucci." Though her nail salon, Shine and Glow, was in a prime location near Newton Center Station, I'd heard rumors about declining customer numbers. There were even whispers about unpaid staff wages. Amy's husband Michael is 36. He suddenly quit his job as an accountant at a large corporation after 8 years and now works as a temp. It was an uncharacteristic decision for such a meticulous and polite man. He used to be so family-oriented, always taking Lucas to the park on weekends, but lately, that too had stopped. He looked exhausted, and the couple seemed to be talking less. One day, when I discovered bruises on Lucas's arms, my heart froze. He fell down the stairs, Amy explained, but Lucas's eyes trembled with fear. When I tried to take him to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Amy strongly refused. The weekly visits suddenly started getting canceled. 2 staff members quit the salon, and business hours became irregular. Amy explained it as business improvement and talked enthusiastically about new equipment investments, but there was something hollow in her words. We hadn't seen Amy's family at our church community near Boston College lately either. Weekend family dinners had decreased, and phone calls with me had become less frequent. Something was wrong. My daughter's flashy clothes and my son-in-law's exhausted expression. My grandson's frightened eyes. I couldn't yet pinpoint what that something was. That Saturday, the day that would forever change my life, our family's life, was approaching quietly but surely. Saturday, June 10th. That day too, I was absorbed in my gardening. The scent of newly planted lavender wafted on the early summer breeze. The sky was crystal clear blue. It should have been the perfect start to a weekend. The first thing I heard was a faint sound. From the direction of the garage. I thought it was probably a stray cat. We'd been seeing a lot of ginger strays in the neighborhood lately. Mrs. Jones had apparently been feeding them. But the next sound I heard was clearly human. Coming from the trunk of my Lexus RX 350. That's strange. I took off my gardening gloves and headed toward the garage. I was sure I'd taken out all the shopping bags I'd loaded in the trunk yesterday. As I got closer, the sound became more distinct. Like quiet sobbing. And then, a familiar voice. Grandma. My hands trembled. I took out my car keys and tried to open the trunk. In front of my eyes, clouded with heat and fear, I failed 3 times before managing to press the button. With a click, the trunk opened. Lucas! I was screaming. My 5-year-old grandson was curled up shaking in the narrow trunk. Even in the dim light, the bruises were painfully visible. On his face, arms, and legs. His long-sleeved t-shirt was soaked with sweat, and his pants showed clear signs of having wet himself. "Grandma, help me." That whisper tore at my heart. "It's okay, Lucas. You're safe now." When I lifted him up, his body was burning hot. He must have spent hours in the trunk. He had to be dehydrated. I immediately carried him inside. I laid him on the sofa in the air-conditioned living room, wiping his body with cool towels. I helped him drink water slowly. "Amy, answer the phone." My daughter's cell phone went to voicemail. I called Michael's number too, but there was no response. Finally, amid my mixing anxiety and anger, a call came through. "Mom? I'm busy right now." Amy's voice. And in the background, familiar sounds. The electronic chimes of slot machines, excited shouts, the clinking of coins. "Amy, where's Lucas?" "Huh? He's at home. Sleeping." An obvious lie. And her voice was slurred with alcohol. "I'm on a winning streak. Already up 50,000. I could hear Michael's voice in the background. "Amy, let's go home. Don't interfere." Through the phone, I could hear the couple arguing. Then suddenly, the call cut off. With trembling hands, I checked the number again. Area code 702. Las Vegas. The next moment, Lucas started coughing. His fever was rising. There was no time for hesitation. I considered calling an ambulance but decided driving would be faster. "Lucas, we're going to the hospital." "Okay." He gave a small nod. When I lifted him, I could feel his tiny body trembling. From fear, fever, or both. The drive to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. What normally took 15 minutes felt like an eternity that day. At every red light, I checked on Lucas in the rearview mirror. Cold sweat on his forehead. "We're almost there, hang in there." As I spoke these words, I gripped the steering wheel with something like a prayer. And in my heart, I kept asking, why did this happen? What was happening to my precious family? At Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center's pediatric emergency room, Dr. Thompson examined each of Lucas's bruises one by one. A nurse quietly took photographs. Evidence photos. "Mrs. Baker, let me explain your grandson's condition." In the examination room, Dr. Thompson showed a grave expression. Multiple contusions. Some new, some over a week old. His nutritional state is poor. He also shows clear signs of dehydration. This is. The doctor chose his words carefully before continuing. A clear case of abuse. By law, we are obligated to report this. Those words made the reality definitive. We've already contacted Child Protective Services and the Boston Police. Your grandson will be safe here until the officers arrive. Shortly after, Detective Sarah Martinez arrived. The Hispanic female detective approached Lucas with a gentle yet professional manner. "Hey, Lucas. Don't be scared. You've done nothing wrong." At first, Lucas remained silent. But as he hugged the teddy bear Detective Martinez had brought, he slowly began to talk. "Mom said there was no money. Dad's salary wasn't enough. So," he continued with a trembling voice, "she said they could make money in Las Vegas. But Dad didn't want to. Then Mom got angry. Just then, we heard commotion in the hallway. That's my child. Where is he?" Amy's voice. The smell of alcohol wafted into the room. "Ma'am, please calm down." The voice of hospital security trying to restrain her. Then Michael's tired voice. "Amy, stop it." Detective Martinez stood up and left the room. I held Lucas tight. His small body was trembling. "It's okay. Grandma will protect you." The argument in the hallway continued for a while. Eventually, Amy's screaming voice faded away. Security must have taken her away. That night, a long discussion with Detective Martinez began. Security camera footage, statements from neighbors, and Lucas's testimony. Everything pointed to a horrifying truth. The next morning, a reporter from the Boston Globe appeared at the hospital. Headlines like, "Child abuse discovered in upscale neighborhood," would surely be published soon. But even more shocking facts were about to come to light. The documents Michael submitted to the police. Papers showing the financial state of Amy's nail salon. They revealed an unimaginable amount of debt. $1.5 million. Customer deposits had been misappropriated. Unpaid wages had accumulated. And it all led to one pathological addiction. Gambling addiction. My daughter had locked her son in a car trunk and gambled away large sums in Las Vegas casinos. How long would it take me to accept this reality? But now, I had to be strong for Lucas, sleeping peacefully before me. Outside, ambulance sirens wailed, as if announcing the start of a new day. In Detective Martinez's office, Michael began to tell everything. Beneath his exhausted expression, the truth slowly leaked out. It all started last September. At the time, Amy's nail salon, Shine and Glow, seemed to be doing well. Prime location near Newton Center Station. Growing Instagram followers, steady new customers. But that was just the surface. Sales had gradually declined with new competition. Staff turnover increased. Amy kept making expensive equipment investments to keep up appearances, was denied bank loans, and turned to loan sharks. It started with $50,000. We thought we could pay it back. But trapped in a cycle of high-interest payments, they fell into a new debt cycle. Amy became increasingly absorbed in online gambling. One big win and we can pay it all back. That temptation consumed her. Irregularities were discovered in the company's accounting department. Michael had misappropriated company funds to cover Amy's debts. After discovery, he was fired. Lost his position as an accountant of 8 years. But Amy didn't change. Rather, things only got worse. Salon revenues disappeared into online casinos the same day. Customer prepayments, staff salaries. The debt snowballed to $1.5 million. The Las Vegas trip. Michael's voice caught in his throat. Actually, it was for a job interview as a casino dealer. A stable income of $80,000 per year. A desperate plan to rebuild their lives. But Amy followed me without permission. While Michael was in his interview, Amy lost big at the casino. Then came threatening calls from loan sharks. Cornered, she began abusing Lucas. My precious son. Michael covered his face. His shoulders shook. Just then, Detective Martinez's phone rang. She answered, responding briefly several times. Then she looked at us. Amy has started confessing. Security cameras had captured everything. Early Saturday morning, Amy put the sleeping Lucas in her car and drove to my house. After confirming I had started gardening, she put Lucas in her trunk and transferred him to mine. He was in the way, so I thought I'd have you watch him for a while. Amy's words during interrogation. Even drunk, those words from a mother left the police officers speechless. The investigation revealed even more horrifying facts. Amy had begun facilitating illegal prostitution at the salon to fund her gambling. Multiple young women had been victimized. The loan sharks were connected to organized crime. Michael's testimony continued. Amy had tried to offer Lucas's custody as collateral for new loans. There was even the possibility of human trafficking. Detective Martinez quietly announced while organizing papers on her desk. This is no longer just a child abuse case. It could develop into an organized crime investigation. The FBI will be joining the investigation. Outside the window, camera flashes from reporters were flashing. The tragic incident in Boston's upscale neighborhood had instantly become national news. I thought of Lucas sleeping peacefully in the hospital. How could such a heavy fate have fallen on that small body? Ma'am. Michael took my hand. My son. Lucas, please. Even if temporarily. I nodded firmly at those words. Right now, protecting Lucas was the priority. We had to heal his emotional wounds, even if slowly. Detective Martinez smiled gently. Lucas is fortunate to have such a wonderful grandmother. Outside, dusk was approaching. I contemplated our new life beginning tomorrow. I couldn't forgive my daughter yet. But I had to be strong for my grandson's future. The Massachusetts summer twilight was unusually beautiful. 6 months later, in December, a small Christmas tree sparkled in my living room. The scent of cinnamon I'd bought yesterday from Whole Foods added a warm atmosphere to the room. Grandma, I think this star should be higher up. Lucas pointed to the star at the top of the tree. His voice no longer held that day's fear. 3 weekly therapy sessions with the child psychologist at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and a stable life had gradually begun healing his heart. You're right. We'll ask Dad when he gets home. How about some hot chocolate before then? While making the warm drink in the kitchen, I reflected on how much had changed since that day. Michael now works at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. Recognized for his dealing skills, he's even been assigned to train new hires. His diligent work ethic has already earned him a promotion. He video calls his son every weekend and returns to Boston once a month. He was granted a 10-day Christmas vacation. The debt repayment plan is steadily progressing with consultation from a sharp lawyer at Boston Legal. The loan shark debts were invalidated by the FBI investigation. The illegal loan contracts were deemed legally unenforceable. Compensation for salon customers was arranged through insurance and asset sales. Dad's plane today. Yes, he said he'll arrive by 6. Did you finish your homework? Lucas nodded with a beaming smile. His grades at Newton Elementary School had improved, and he'd made new friends. He's particularly excelling in math, ranking among the top in his grade. His teacher, Mrs. Brown, praised his remarkable resilience and intellectual curiosity. 6 months after the incident that made the front page of the Boston Globe, Amy is participating in a rehabilitation program at the Massachusetts State Addiction Treatment Center. She received a 7-year prison sentence for child abuse and embezzlement, but with good behavior, parole might be possible in 4 years. I still don't want to see Mom, Lucas said softly while drinking his hot chocolate. Understandable. It will take much more time for his emotional wounds to heal. His therapist Jennifer also advises, don't rush, go at his pace. But during recent therapy, Lucas showed tears for the first time when discussing his mother. Not tears of anger or fear, but sadness. Why did Mom change? That question squeezed my heart too. But perhaps it's also the beginning of healing. Near Newton Center Station, where the salon used to be, there's now a small cafe. It's popular, with lines of commuters forming each morning. The neighbors go about their daily lives as if nothing happened. But in these 6 months, our family has changed dramatically. The federal court criminal trial revealed the full extent of the loan shark organization. From Boston to Las Vegas, there were over 200 cases of victims. Illegal high interest rates, threats, violence. Amy was one of those victims too. Falling into gambling addiction, trapped by loan sharks, and eventually endangering her own child. Victim and perpetrator. As a mother, I still can't sort out the complex feelings in my heart. Grandma, it's snowing. Outside the window, Boston's first snow had begun to fall. White crystals quietly covering the earth. Crystal Lake would soon freeze over and become a skating rink. This year, you can go skating with Dad. Lucas's eyes sparkled. Just then, the doorbell rang. It's Dad. Lucas ran to the door. Michael entered with a big smile. In his suit, he had completely shed his former exhausted expression. Seeing father and son embrace, tears welled up in my eyes. I'm home, Mom. And Merry Christmas. Michael held out a large paper bag. Inside were chocolates from a famous Las Vegas chocolatier. Welcome home. Having you back is the best gift of all. I smiled. People make mistakes. But they can also repent and recover. Perhaps there's no such thing as a perfect family. Still, we keep moving forward. The snow continued falling quietly. The streetlights reflecting on Crystal Lake cast a dreamlike glow. When we get through this winter, spring will come again. By then, surely new flowers will bloom in my garden. And in our lives too, a new season will arrive. At 4 a.m., a faint light from the dawn filtered through the curtains. In my drowsy state, I noticed my husband Scott getting up and leaving the room. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear what sounded like a newspaper delivery motorcycle. Between those sounds, I heard Scott's footsteps as he quietly made his way up to the second floor. Strange, why was Scott going upstairs? The second floor only had our clothes storage room and our granddaughter Pamela's room. I was still half asleep at the time, and thinking Scott had just gotten up to use the bathroom, I didn't pay it much mind and drifted back to sleep. The next time I woke up was when my bedside alarm clock rang. It was a typical morning, a typical Sunday. It was my day off work, and I was doing household chores from early morning. Scott emerged from the bedroom, changed into his jogging clothes, and started doing simple stretches at the edge of the living room. "Hey, weren't you up really early?" I asked. "Huh? Oh, yes, I just woke up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night." "Didn't you go to Pamela's room after that?" "It was around 4 a.m., wasn't it?" Scott wouldn't look at me. After finishing his lower back stretches, he hurriedly left the house. As he left, Pamela came down from the second floor. Her bangs had grown long enough to cover her eyes, and the dark circles under her eyes were noticeable. "Good morning." "Hey, did your grandfather come to your room this morning?" "Oh, yes." "I'm sorry." Why was she apologizing? Pamela sat in a chair, hunching her shoulders, staring at the empty table. She looked tired. Sensing it wasn't the right time to talk, I silently placed a cup of coffee in front of her. Then I headed to the washroom and started checking the laundry basket item by item. This was my habit. If there were tissues left in pockets, it would be a disaster. However, when I picked up the pajamas from the basket, I froze. "What's this?" "My name is Jeanette. I live with my husband Scott and our high school-aged granddaughter Pamela. Pamela lives with us because her parents have passed away. Scott and I were both cram school teachers, and that's where we fell in love. When we first met, Scott often told me about how much he had struggled academically in his younger days. He spoke passionately about putting his heart into teaching students, not wanting them to repeat his mistakes. "I don't care if they hate me. But the mental strength they gain from strict guidance will definitely serve them well in society," he would say. He often yelled at his students. Making them stay at the cram school until they solved problems was a regular occurrence. If they forgot their homework, he would scold them with a thundering voice. Back then, in my younger days, I saw Scott as a wonderful person who truly cared about his students. However, 14 years ago, a complaint came in from the parent of one of Scott's students. The head of the cram school apparently called Scott in and told him, "Your teaching methods are excessive." In the end, Scott couldn't defend himself and was forced to quit. He tried to find new employment, but no place seemed willing to recognize his talents. Scott was 54 at the time. Perhaps he lacked the courage to try a different field. Eventually, he gave up job hunting and became a shut-in. I couldn't bring myself to blame Scott, and just wanted to support him. It was painful to see him sitting on the sofa with a lifeless expression, just staring at the wall. But we needed to earn money to live. While Scott was in his depression, I went back to teaching at the cram school to support our household. What saved Scott from his depression was the presence of our granddaughter, Pamela. 10 years ago, we lost our son and his wife in a tragic accident. Pamela, who was only 4 at the time, couldn't understand that her parents were gone and cried almost every night. I didn't know what words to offer her, and just spent those sleepless nights with her. In the quiet of night, we would look at butterfly encyclopedias together. Pamela loved butterfly encyclopedias, and the image of her desperately studying them while tears fell onto the pages is burned into my memory. There are so many different butterflies. They're beautiful, aren't they? At that time, looking at butterfly encyclopedias together was all I could think of to help distract Pamela from her grief and pain. Perhaps due to the emotional trauma of losing her parents, Pamela often couldn't attend school. There's no need to force yourself to go to school. I can teach you, Scott had said, probably meaning it lightly at first. From elementary through middle school, on days when Pamela couldn't go to school, Scott would teach her. Pamela was a quiet girl who didn't talk much. She was obedient and honest. Losing our son and his wife in the accident at the same time was truly a tragic event. However, I felt that for Scott, Pamela had become his new reason for living. When I would come home at night after work, the living room was always empty. If I quietly approached Pamela's room on the second floor, I could hear Scott's voice softly teaching her. Now, listen. This problem is an application of this equation. Although I couldn't see Scott's expression through the door, I could tell from the energy in his voice that he was full of life. I would start preparing dinner. The kitchen was always spotlessly clean. Scott cleaned every corner of the house. I would take out a frying pan and start cooking. Around the time the appetizing aroma filled the room, Scott would come downstairs with Pamela. Scott always had an enthusiastic expression, which truly put me at ease. Jeanette, listen. Pamela has a great memory and understanding. She could definitely become a scholar in the future. Wow! That's amazing, Pamela. Good job. Pamela would hide her eyes behind her slightly long bangs and look down shyly. I believed these happy days would continue forever. However, when Pamela entered her second year of high school, the atmosphere in the house gradually changed. If you can't even solve a problem like this, you'll definitely fail the entrance exams. Scott's angry shouts were loud enough to hear even downstairs. He was teaching Pamela in her room. Now in high school, Pamela was still quiet and somewhat withdrawn, but she attended school regularly. She went to a locally famous high school and her grades weren't bad. Both Scott and I had certain expectations for her future. Wrong. That's not it. Look at the problem carefully. Feeling a bit worried, I went upstairs and knocked on Pamela's door. Scott, not Pamela, opened the door asking, "What is it?" "What's wrong?" So I somewhat hesitantly entered the room. I saw Pamela hunched over her desk, her face close to her notebook. Her back seemed to radiate exhaustion, and I couldn't help but suggest, "Why don't you take a break?" After a moment's hesitation, Scott told Pamela, "Let's take a break," and we all went down to the living room. I had prepared shortcake, which Pamela loved. Coffee was already brewed, and Scott, immediately taking a sip from his cup upon sitting down, let out an almost exaggerated sigh. "This is the crucial moment, Pamela. When you're young, your body can handle pushing yourself. Study hard even if it's tough, get into a top university. After that, join a top company, and a bright future awaits. I quietly took a sip from my coffee mug. A bright future. I don't think what Scott was saying was wrong. But when I think about the feelings behind his passionate words, it makes me a bit sad. Scott never graduated from university. I know he feels insecure about this. Even when he was teaching at the cram school, he often mentioned that he had the lowest academic credentials among the teachers. He doesn't want our precious granddaughter Pamela to experience the same kind of humiliation he did. These feelings were conveyed to me alone. Scott's teaching was strict. Although I understood this even without directly experiencing his instruction, with entrance exams approaching, I didn't think to stop him. I think this is the time in life when you study the most. So let's do our best, Pamela. At my words, Pamela just looked down, not responding at all. She didn't reach for her favorite shortcake, just gripping her hands together under the table. Suddenly, I noticed she was biting her lip. Pamela, what's wrong? It's nothing, she said in a slightly hoarse voice. Pamela had always been introverted and struggled to express her feelings well. After eating half of the shortcake, she said she'd save the rest for later and put it in the refrigerator. As Pamela was about to return to her room upstairs with a glass of iced coffee, Scott stopped her. Solve through problem 20 in the practice problems. I'll check on you in an hour. Pamela didn't reply verbally, just nodding her head to show she understood Scott's request. She seemed a bit down. Come to think of it, Pamela had always loved studying since she was little. She used to proudly show us her perfect test scores with an innocent smile. I thought maybe she was just tired, and planned to take her shopping when I had time to help lift her spirits. One night, I woke up to Scott pulling back the covers and quietly opening the door to the hallway. It was 4 a.m., and a faint light from dawn filtered through the curtains. In my drowsy state, I caught a glimpse of an unsettling gleam in Scott's eyes. Maybe it was just my imagination. But something felt wrong, and I forced my heavy body to sit up. I listened carefully. I heard Scott flush the toilet, and I crawled back under the covers. Oh, he just got up to use the bathroom. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear what sounded like a newspaper delivery motorcycle. Between those sounds, I heard Scott's footsteps as he quietly made his way up to the second floor. Strange, why was Scott going upstairs? The second floor only had our clothes storage room and Pamela's room. What could he be doing up there so early in the morning? As I pondered this with my eyes closed, I drifted back to sleep. The next time I woke up was when my bedside alarm clock rang. I reflexively reached out to stop it. After gently returning the clock that had just finished its duty to its original position, I gazed at Scott's sleeping face beside me. I got up and started preparing breakfast. It was a typical morning, a typical Sunday. Since it was my day off work, I was doing household chores from early morning. Scott made morning jogging his daily routine. He came out of the bedroom, changed into his jogging clothes, and started doing simple stretches at the edge of the living room. I placed the newspaper I'd brought in from outside on the table and casually asked Scott. Hey, weren't you up really early? Huh? Oh, yes, I just woke up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. Didn't you go to Pamela's room after that? It was around 4 a.m., wasn't it? Scott wouldn't look at me, continuing his lower back stretches. I was just checking her studying. Checking her studying. At 4 a.m.? Question marks floated in my mind, but Scott finished his stretches and hurriedly left the house. As he left, Pamela came down from the second floor. Her bangs had grown long enough to cover her eyes, and the dark circles under her eyes were noticeable. "Hey, were you studying from so early? Are you feeling all right?" "Yes. I'm sorry." Why was she apologizing when I wasn't even scolding her? Pamela sat in a chair, hunching her shoulders, staring at the empty table. She looked tired. She must have just finished studying late into the night and finally gotten a moment's rest. Thinking it might be bothersome to talk too much, I silently placed a cup of coffee in front of her. Then I headed to the washroom and started checking the laundry one piece at a time. This was an old habit. Our late son used to always leave tissues in his pants pockets, which would make a mess of the laundry. Now there's no one who does that anymore, but habits are hard to break. When I picked up Pamela's pajamas, I froze. What's this? There were faint bloodstains like marks on the sleeve of the polka-dot pajamas. When I turned them over, there was blood on the back too. I furrowed my brow, pondered for a moment, then threw the clothes into the washing machine. We have a balcony for hanging laundry on the second floor, but thinking it would be hard to climb stairs when we get older, we added a wooden deck to the first floor last year. It's very convenient to be able to hang laundry just by stepping outside the living room window. The wooden deck has different levels, and Pamela was sitting on one of them. Despite the intense summer heat outside, Pamela sat quietly, sweat beading on her neck as she gazed at the garden. The garden was slightly wet. Pamela must have sprinkled some water to help with the heat. "Pamela, aren't you hot? Why don't you come inside?" "No. I'm waiting." "Waiting? For what?" Water droplets sparkled on the neatly trimmed lawn, reflecting the light. I didn't think much of Pamela not answering my question, and after finishing hanging the laundry, I sat down next to her to look at the garden. "Pamela, there was blood on your pajamas. What was that from?" I asked casually. Since it had been hot lately, I thought maybe she had gotten a nosebleed or something similar. But Pamela's expression changed instantly when she heard my question. She looked shocked, then fearfully stared at me, and eventually started trembling while hugging herself. "What? What's wrong? What happened?" Alarmed by Pamela's sudden change, I reached for her shoulder. She twisted her face in pain and pushed my hand away. "Don't touch me." I was just confused, not understanding what was happening. After a while, without saying anything, Pamela rolled up her t-shirt sleeve. "Oh, wait, this is..." Her shoulder area was bruised purple. As she showed me this painful-looking bruise, Pamela began to cry. I immediately embraced her. While we held each other, unable to see each other's faces, Pamela began to tell me in a hoarse voice that Scott had been coming to her room every morning for the past month. Scott's early morning visits to Pamela's room had apparently been happening every day, I just hadn't noticed. He would bring his own handmade practice problems and forbid her from going out until she solved them, scolding her harshly. She confessed that when I was away at work, he would force her to study with an intense tone, and hit her arms and back when she got problems wrong. "It's my fault, I'm sorry. I have to finish the practice problems before Grandpa comes back." When Pamela tried to get up from the deck and return to her room, I instinctively grabbed her arm to stop her. She looked down at me with a frightened expression. I knew Scott was passionate about education. I knew his teaching style was always passionate and tended to push people into corners. But I hadn't noticed the physical abuse. I never imagined he would force studying through violence that left bruises on his own granddaughter's body. Still holding Pamela's arm, I started crying. How scared you must have been, how painful it must have been. When I imagined how Pamela must have felt sitting at that study desk all this time, tears overflowed. "I'm sorry, Pamela. I'm so sorry, I didn't notice until now." Still gripping Pamela's hand, I apologized to her. The wall clock in the living room chimed to mark the hour. I looked up, quickly wiped away my tears and stood up, still holding Pamela's hand, and returned to the living room. I took out my bag and a case containing insurance cards and similar documents from the dresser, then looked Pamela in the eyes and said firmly, "Pamela, let's go." "Where?" "I don't know, but Scott will be back soon. Let's leave the house before then." Pamela looked down, wringing her hands in front of her stomach. Maybe she was confused, not knowing what to do. Maybe she was too scared of Scott's physical punishment to run away. Maybe even the thought of escaping frightened her. I put on the brightest expression I could and smiled at Pamela. "It's okay, I'll definitely protect you." And so, Pamela and I left the house with just a few essential belongings. We took a taxi from our house to the station, then changed trains several times to reach a distant town. Accompanied by Pamela, who kept her head down with an anxious expression, we headed to my sister and her husband's house. Before leaving home, I had called my sister and briefly explained the situation. Upon learning what had happened, my usually calm sister's expression darkened as she led Pamela to a separate room to help her calm down. Once Pamela was gone, my sister suddenly showed her anger, muttering, "This is absolutely unforgivable," while clenching her fist. Then she readily agreed that we could stay there as long as we needed. I was deeply grateful to her. My phone vibrated, and looking at the screen, I saw Scott's name displayed. After some hesitation, I decided to answer. "Hey, Jeanette. Where did you go? Pamela's with you, isn't she? She hasn't made any progress with her practice problems. Where are you dragging her around to? Don't you understand what you've done?" I could hear Scott sigh on the other end of the phone. He started speaking in an almost mocking tone, calling Pamela stupid and suggesting we must have run to my sister and her husband's place. "Did Pamela tell you I was violent with her?" "Yes. You used enough violence to leave bruises on her shoulders and back, didn't you? Don't you understand what you've done?" "You're the one who doesn't understand, Jeanette. We don't have children. Pamela is the only one we can rely on in our old age." I was at a loss for words, not understanding what Scott meant. Here was his reasoning: the violence against Pamela was necessary for her to get into a top university, join a prestigious company, and eventually take care of them in their old age with her stable income. He passionately argued that the pain was necessary to make her mentally stronger. I was speechless at his words, which seemed to border on madness. "You hurt Pamela for something like that?" We can't discuss this over the phone. I'm coming there, so wait. I'm bringing her back. I heard his labored breathing before he hung up. I put my phone in my bag, my shoulders slumping. No matter what transportation Scott used, it would take at least 2 hours to get from our home to my sister's house. Even if he hurried, we still had plenty of time. If you want to divorce him, I'll help you, my sister said. Thanks, I'm going to check on Pamela. When Pamela was younger, she had stayed at this house before. There was a guest room, and Pamela had always liked using it without needing to be told. Around the corner at the end of the hallway, when I opened the door, I caught a faint whiff of that distinctive musty paper smell of books. There was a large bookshelf there with old books lined up. On the lower shelves, next to the complete collection series that every household seemed to have back then, was the encyclopedia series. Pamela had fallen asleep leaning against the window, with a thick butterfly encyclopedia open in front of her. She must have been exhausted. I should let her sleep peacefully now. I returned to the living room without disturbing Pamela, and at my sister's prompting, began discussing our future plans. I absolutely cannot forgive him. Hurting Pamela, no matter what his reasons were, that's absolutely unforgivable. Whether he expresses regret or remorse, whatever Scott might say, I can't bring myself to forgive him. My sister and her husband listened to me with serious expressions. My words might have included some daily grievances too. Starting with complaints about Scott, who had remained unemployed for over 10 years, to his excessive educational methods. Like a confession, I revealed everything about myself, including how I couldn't stop him, to them. After a while, the doorbell rang. When my sister answered, Scott was at the entrance greeting her. When he noticed me, his expression clouded over, and he quickly said, "Let's go home, Jeanette. I'm going to stay here for a while, and I want a divorce." What? Is this because I was strict with Pamela? He used the mild expression, strict, probably because my sister and her husband were present. I didn't strongly correct his choice of words. But I could never forgive him, and felt such hatred that I didn't even want to look at his face. Scott fell silent at the entrance. He stared at his palms, then eventually gave a bitter smile. Pamela has no parents. We're her parent substitutes. It's a parent's sin not to make their child study. Since Pamela's parents who should be blamed for her poor grades are gone. What are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Everything was for Pamela. I know she hates me. But Jeanette, are you going to reject me too? Am I going to be alone again, like that time? That's right, 14 years ago, Scott was fired from his cram school job just because one student's parent complained. He fell into depression and suffered, and it was Pamela who saved him from that darkness. Maybe Pamela had been desperately trying to illuminate Scott's darkness in her heart. I looked up, about to approach Scott. That's when my sister grabbed my arm. Her expression was stern, her gaze suspicious. Enough of this charade. This isn't about being hated or anything like that. We're talking about the violence that left bruises. This has nothing to do with you. This is our family matter. You just used Pamela for your own desires. No reason could justify hurting Pamela. Listen, if you keep pushing this, we'll have to handle this professionally rather than as relatives. Keep that in mind. Scott fell silent, unable to respond. My sister and her husband both work in law enforcement. I didn't want to get Scott in trouble with the police through filing a complaint. While my sister and her husband appeared to be maintaining their composure and responding calmly, anger seemed to be boiling beneath the surface. I had already made up my mind to divorce Scott. Although Scott was very reluctant about the divorce, my sister and her husband helped persuade him. My sister's words about it being better to quietly agree to the divorce rather than having Pamela's case become public seemed to be the deciding factor. Scott reluctantly agreed and left the house after dividing our assets. I heard that Scott now lives in an old apartment. I don't know how he's thinking about his own old age, but I feel a bit sad thinking he might end up alone. After the divorce, Pamela and I returned to our original house and chose to live just the two of us. When I told her she didn't need to study for entrance exams, Pamela showed genuine relief. However, probably due to the trauma she suffered, she doesn't seem to sleep well at night. I think we can slowly consider what to do next while she goes to counseling. She can go to university after she feels settled, or she could get a job. If she doesn't want to do anything, that's fine too. Pamela is still young, she can keep searching, keep wondering, and eventually find her own answers. Another hot summer has come again. Pamela sits quietly on a thin mat laid out on the sun-warmed wooden deck, gazing at the garden. I water the various plants planted around the house with a hose. Aren't you hot? Why don't you go inside? I'm fine. I'm waiting here. Just as I was about to open my mouth to ask for what, Pamela's eyes widened and she stood up. She quickly slipped on her sandals and walked toward the garden, looking up at the sky. Her heels stick out from the faded sandals. When did she get so big? In Pamela's line of sight, 2 black butterflies were fluttering around, eventually settling on the lawn to drink water. Butterflies come to drink water when summer arrives. They occasionally visit from the forest near our house. As Pamela approached the butterflies, they fluttered around her a few times before settling back on the ground to drink from the water droplets. Hey, Grandma, please live a long time. I gently embrace Pamela as she stands there. She has such a delicate frame, I thought I need to feed her more delicious meals from now on. Someday, I will leave this house before her. I wonder what I can do now to make that future, whenever it comes, as painless as possible for Pamela. The butterfly encyclopedia left open on the wooden deck has its pages turned by the wind. Eventually, the 2 butterflies slowly flapped their wings and flew away beyond the fence. As I watched them go, I whispered softly, "It's okay, I'll figure something out."